Hello and welcome back to the second part of this Chapter 1 lecture. So we just talked about abstract reasoning and how MIS could help you with that. So we'll go on to the second important skill you should have, and that's systems thinking. Again, that's thinking about how to use your inputs in order to transform those through some kind of processing into some outputs. And so that's at a very high level. You could think of inputs, or what do you need to um, register for a class. Those would be your inputs. The output would be a class roster for the faculty member. What do you need in order to do that? Well, you're going to need to have students be registered. Once they're registered, they're going to get a student ID. Then they're going to use that student ID to register for a course. That course needs to be identified by a CRN number, so I'm going to need that. So those become my inputs. Once I have that information, then I've got to transform that into an output for the faculty member, and that should list the student's name, student's ID, their major, and their email. So also with systems thinking, you want to be able to think about those components, but also come up with different designs, if you will. So you want to be able to discuss what are the positive and negative aspects of a certain design, and under different situations, as you see here. The next skill you should get good at is probably collaboration. This is where you're working with other people towards a common goal or some end result. It might be a work product. And so some collaborative information systems that you already have available to you would be through Blackboard. So on Blackboard we could set up certain groups, and the groups could have their own email, just to be emailing in between the groups. They get to have their own discussion board. So that's what we mean by collaborative skills. There are also exercises in the chapter you may want to look at, but I'm not going to assign those to groups since this portion of the class is done outside of the course. We'll have our collaboration in class when we're discussing the different spreadsheet topics. The last skill that MIS can help you with is this ability to experiment. And so here you want to have the confidence to go ahead and change things around and see what the outcome is. If you look at this last point on the slide, a lot of people are fearful of making a mistake and not taking those chances in order to do things. And so those people, while they may be good, they're probably not going to move up in an organization. So you want to be able to have some confidence in yourself so that you can do some experimentation and try and get things to be better, or to save costs, or to increase profits. And so a lot of times you hear these excuses like, well, I've never done this before, or that's the way we've always done it. I don't know how to do this. I'm not familiar with the technology, and so on. And so you don't want to be somebody that's always coming up with excuses as to why not did you not try to do something better, especially in the different processes that might go on with a business. So a direct way for us to do this ability to experiment is think about the different functions that you have in Microsoft Excel. You also see the same sort of thing in Access. So you'll be able to try different things there and see if it works for you, if it's a better way of presenting something to the user of that spreadsheet or Access database. Also, those spreadsheets are another way of using collaborative technology in order to communicate with people. So you may not be the only one working on a spreadsheet. It may be a group of you that are designing this thing so that others can come into the organization and use it. So question 3 of what you should be getting out of this first chapter was, how are MIS related jobs in high demand? So typically what they're finding is a lot of college graduates still need some additional training or education after they graduate. In terms of technology, a lot of that in businesses might deal with security, might deal with better uh, skills at spreadsheets, databases, or whatever specific application they're using. They also found that a lot of graduates were working in an area that didn't require a degree, so they're underemployed. And this last one, they found that students that had IS courses had better success, so they had better technical skills. So again, I would ask, make sure you're learning how to do spreadsheets, how to do the Access database, and when an employer can see that you can actually do these things, they're more likely to hire you and you're more likely to be more successful. Now, some additional things that we offer, we have the business data analytics degree, which goes well as a dual major. We also have a applied data analytics certificate, which means you take CIS243, a statistics class, and then 4 BI or BDA type classes, and you get the certificate. Now, only 2 BDA classes are required, and you can fulfill the other analytic type courses with something in your major, especially if you might be in econ. There are several analytic type courses listed in that area that can be used for the certificate. So all of those will help increase your skills for a potential job. So here's a graphic showing how all the jobs have progressed over the last 20 years. And so you can see that it kind of puts to an end the myth that all good computer jobs have gone overseas. And so there's a growth there. As you can see here, this one, the computer systems design and related services, the 2000.com burst, that's, you see this drop here, and then it's starting to take off exponentially again. If you look at this red line, we've got management, scientific, and technical consulting. It's increasing. Again, you had that little .com bubble bust right there. Again, it's starting to take off. We can also look at growth a little differently with these tables here. So this came from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and these are the job projections of the different areas. So if you're looking at business managers or computers and information technology, what the median pay is, what the expected job growth is, and what it would be in numbers. So you can see here we've got network systems analysts, database administrators, and so on. What their pay is, what the growth is going to be, what the Bureau of Labor Statistics thinks it's going to be, and then what the actual numbers are. So here you can see there's going to be a huge demand for software developers. And so even if you're not going into this area, you're going to be a business person, you're going to be dealing with people that have these skill sets and are providing these services in your organization, and you're going to need to understand what they do and be able to communicate with them and let them know what you need to have done in order to make the business operate as efficiently as possible. So again, that's what we're trying to convey in this first chapter, is that yeah, you may not be in this area, but you're going to have to communicate and understand what's going on in this area. So if we tie all these in together, then hopefully we make the case that This MIS course is probably maybe one of the most important courses you're going to take. So it's going to give you a background to be able to assess, evaluate, and apply these new technologies to business. Gives you marketable skills in terms of learning how to think about systems, how to do some abstract thinking, how to work with others, and how to think about experimentation in, say, even with that technology. For our experimentation, is going to be using the spreadsheets, putting in different numbers, developing different models, changing things around in terms of the different numbers and seeing what the outcome might be. So hopefully with those skills, that'll make you aware and maybe even a candidate for some of those well-paying MIS jobs. So question 4 then, the answer is, what exactly is MIS? So if you can think of it as having key elements. So that MIS, management information, typically we would say systems, but now we want you to think about it as strategies. So we're thinking about management and use of information systems so that you can have a strategic advantage for your company. So from a managed perspective, it means you're going to be able to develop and maintain systems that are going to be able to help you meet your needs in the organization. So this also means that you're going to need to create an active or have an active role in the actual development. Now you see on the screen it says why. And so the reason is if you're not involved, you're not going to get the system you want. And so you have to be actively involved. You can't just turn it over to a programmer and expect them to come back with a system that's going to meet your needs. So you're going to need to be involved in that whole process. And we'll have an entire chapter on that later on, and I'll walk you through that. So here are the 5 components of an information system. So we're going to think about the hardware, the software, and then we're going to have data. That's typically your IT component. And then we're going to have procedures and people. That's your information components. But all of these together make up the entire system. And so, we used to have MIS programs that dealt with hardware and software, very technical. There's soft side IS programs that deal with procedures and people, and then there are programs that deal with data. So in the information systems department here at Western, we're currently concentrating on data for our major. So with that business data analytic major, we're going to concentrate on this area. So here's a slide that kind of breaks down the difference between IT and IS. So when we think about IT, information technology, we're looking at different products, different methods, different standards, and so these things kind of drive the new information systems. So the IT components in that previous slide were the hardware, the software, and the data. Then IS becomes the procedures and people in addition to the information technology. And I use IS sort of interchangeably. This IS is the information system altogether, right? Not just the IS of management of the people that are doing things. You'll also hear a lot of people use IS and IT interchangeably to mean the same thing. But if you break it down, it's a little bit different. And so that entire information system versus just the subset of an information system being that IT. So when we look at that information system, there are certain things that people that aren't in the information systems department need to be aware of. And so that would be you as a business professional. So you need to take an active role in that system. and so you make sure that it's going to meet your needs, it's going to produce the output that you need. You need to understand how that information system is built or constructed. And so that may mean you've got to provide certain inputs, or the inputs can be gotten from other systems. And so if you're not aware of that, then somebody may build a system where you're duplicating the efforts of getting those inputs when they already exist from another system somewhere. You also need to think about the user's needs during that development. The users are the people that actually use the system. So it might be the people that work for you. So you actually authorize getting this system built, but you also need to think about how they're going to use the system. How is it going to impact their job performance, and also the processes that they're doing? Is this going to make it easier, or whatever you're doing, could it actually long term make it more difficult? You also have to learn how to ease the fears of your workers in terms of when you introduce a new system. They're very cautious about how that's going to impact their job. Is it going to eliminate their job? Is it going to make them less valuable to the organization? All those sort of fears. You've also got to provide some training and make sure they learn how to use it. You have to learn how to use it so that you can train other people. It would be bad if people were using a system and you really didn't know how to use the system and people were getting trained by somebody else. So once the system is built, you also have to think about, okay, how do I back it up so that if the computer system goes down, I can restore the backup and be ready and working again. And related to that would be the security of that system. Can anybody get in there and look at the data? Could anybody get in there and change the data around so that the reports would be wrong? And so you need to think about, how am I going to secure this so that I'm not getting the negative effects of if somebody gets in there and changes something or deletes something or tries to break it. So the reason why we're building these information systems and using MIS is that MIS is going to use this technology and the system that it's built with to achieve some sort of strategy. And so when we look at that, an example might be, if we look at Facebook, what is the purpose of Facebook? What's the purpose of our system that we're building? What is it going to do for us? What policy for employees' contribution is there going to be? Can an employee suggest changes? Is it going to make it better? How do you keep track of those suggestions and so on? What about when customers review it? Now, not all systems are available to customers to you, but if you do a front-end, say, web-based system where customers are actually placing their own orders or something, you may periodically ask them, what do you think of the system? Is there a way we could improve the process of doing things? So you have, Amazon, eBay are always looking at ways of improving that process for their customers. Now, maybe you need to define who your customers actually are. On eBay, is the customer the person that's coming in and buying something, or is it the people that are actually selling something? So I would argue that both of those could be customers of eBay. Just depends on which one they want to serve and how they want to serve them. And so this last bullet item here, you always want to make sure that whatever your costs are in order to develop this system or to do whatever you're doing, is it going to outweigh or be less than the benefits? So you always want the benefits to be more than the costs. So the last thing to talk about in this chapter is the role in security. And so you need to be aware of how to secure things and make sure that other people aren't getting into areas that they shouldn't be. So when we think of security, you might think of your password. So a password should be 10 or more characters. That's going to be hard for a machine to do a random generation of each value and guess what it is. Now there are some attacks that just use a dictionary, so you probably shouldn't use a name that's in the dictionary. You want to combine things if you could. So, don't use your username or real name or company name as part of that, because people will try and guess that as part and try it. Don't use a dictionary word. Try and not try, but use different previous passwords. A lot of times, companies will set up something that's automated that forces you to change your password every 6 months, and it will check and see if you've used a previous password or some combination of that, and not allow you to do that again. The idea being that as if you were compromised, then you don't want to use something that somebody was able to get in with already, and then they could try that again with a different combination or something. It also helps to use different upper and lowercase letters. Also put a number in there, sometimes a special character, and you can use these characters as well. Now the other thing you can do, and you may not be aware of this, you can generate special characters by holding down the Alt key and hitting a 3-letter combination. When you do that, it generates something that's not on the keyboard. So that character, if that's part of your password, makes it even more difficult to try and break your security for a password. So I've gone to this website, and it shows you what the using the Alt key keyboard sequence would be. So if I wanted this, something that's not on the screen, Alt 130 would produce this. If I wanted, say, this registered trademark, Alt 0174, and so on. So you can just look these up and experiment and see, what might be, and that would really give you some really great security. So I've opened my text editor. I use Notepad++. So if I hold down the Alt key and press 0190 and let go of the Alt key, you see it puts in this fraction of 3/4. So nobody's going to find that on a modern keyboard. So that makes it a good example or a good character to put in there. And it'd be hard for a random generated program that's looking for certain characters to try and guess that for your password. So I just wanted to show you how to do that. Again, you can go to places like this and find it. Other things that you should do is think about your password and how to protect it in terms of never writing down your password. Don't ask somebody for their password. Don't give your password to anyone. A lot of times in social engineering, somebody could come into your office and say, hey, I'm with the IT department, we're checking the system, why don't you let me sit down at your computer and log in and check a couple of things, and then they just politely ask you, okay, your username, your password, and then they've got it. And then they leave the building, and so that sort of stuff happens a lot. And so these are the reasons why you don't want to give out your password. So hopefully we've made the point about MIS and its importance to you in terms of your skills that you learn and advancing your career if you have those technology skills. You want to learn those 4 skills that we talked about from the first slide on. You want to think about each of the different components and learn about each of those components of an IS, of information system. And that is the people, the processes, the data, the software, and the hardware. So I said those backwards. And so each one of those components can be, a course, a major in itself if you wanted to go down that path. But as business people, you'll probably just need to have an overview and understand how that fits into the overall system. And so as we started, we ask these questions. These are the questions that you should be able to answer now from listening to this lecture and also reading the chapter in your book. And that ends the first chapter.